Disclaimer: the contents of Studio 151 podcast and the TU Communication Disorders Connection podcast do not represent the views and beliefs of the University of Tulsa and the Mary Kay Chapman Center.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the TU Communication Disorders Connection podcast. This is Sarah Launchbaugh, and today we have two very special guests joining us as we continue to explore the Big Nine area of articulation. Our first guest is Lily Heyne, a first-year graduate student at the University of Tulsa.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And our second guest is Mimi Khoury, a former TU grad and practicing clinician working on speech, sound, and articulation disorders.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We are thrilled to have you both here today. I'm going to hand it over to Lily to get us started.
Thank you, Sarah. I am so excited to have the opportunity to talk to Mimi today about her journey as a professional clinician in the field of speech-language pathology. So, Mimi, what made you want to be a speech pathologist?
Yeah, so when I was in high school and going to college, I always knew I wanted to work with kids. I had a great internship opportunity my senior year where I got to work with kids who had a variety of disabilities. And at the time, I didn't know it, but I was helping them communicate. So once I got to college, I was able to do some research and found that speech pathology would allow me to work with kids as well as carry out that passion with helping kids communicate.
That's very cool. It's cool that you had that internship opportunity as well to give you a little bit of insight on the population you might be working with. Where did you go to school, and what did your path look like to get to where you are now?
Yeah, so I did 2 years at the University of Kansas. From there, I was able to take some courses, some intro courses in communication sciences and disorders. And then from there, I transferred to Kansas State University, where I completed my bachelor's degree in communication sciences and disorders. From there, I applied to graduate school and got into the University of Tulsa, which was a great program to be at. And that took about 2 years to complete my master's degree in speech language pathology.
Very cool. What was the process like transferring from one undergraduate university to another?
Oh, it was the best thing ever. Sometimes, you go into college and have this idea of what it's going to look like. And KU was just not for me, and that was okay. I wanted to get far away from home, which turns out I actually did not want to go far away from home. So K-State was a little bit closer to where I lived, and I felt like I fit in a little bit better there. So it was a challenging journey. However, in the end, it was what was best for me. So.
Okay, that's very cool. What setting do you currently work in?
So I am based in the schools, and then I do some PRN and after school hours at a clinic. So I'm spread between 2 different areas, which is really interesting because I get to see a lot of different things and get experiences with a variety of different kids. So that's fun about that.
Yeah, that sounds like such good variety. What are some of the main differences between the 2 settings that you see?
Oh gosh, I would say just, the flexibility when you're in the schools. You're following a strict plan, you're following kids' IEPs. I feel like in the clinic setting, you get a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you work on. Qualifying in the clinic is a little less strict than qualifying in the schools. So I would say when you're in the schools, your primary focus is helping the kids succeed in their educational setting, versus in the clinic, I'm working more on everydayly living things, more functional to thrive in just their everyday life. So that is in their home setting, in the community, things like that.
Have you always worked in either a school or clinical setting, or have you worked in any other settings throughout your career?
Nope, just the schools. I always knew I wanted to be in the schools and work with kids. And so this will be my 4th year. I did 2 years treating K through 5. And then this past year, I had a really unique role in the schools where I treated preschool itinerants. So that's preschoolers who only qualified for speech articulation services, which was perfect for me because that's my favorite thing. And then this upcoming year, I will be in a new school, and there I will be treating pre-K through sixth grade. So
Okay, it sounds like now with the preschoolers that you're working with, you're really specialized on articulation. When you worked in the K through 5 setting, what are some other disorders that you were able to treat?
yeah, so language disorders, expressive receptive language. I had a few fluency clients, and I would say in the schools that's primarily what you're working on is either speech, language, and I would say rarely fluency. I've maybe had like 4 total kids the past 4 years working on fluency. In the clinic setting, however, it's a little more flexible. Like we do feeding in the clinics, whereas in the schools you would not target feeding therapy. So
What experiences have prepared you most for the preschool setting that you're in right now, mainly working on articulation with those kids?
yeah, so I would say my internship, because when I did my internship, it was in the preschool setting. My experiences at TU, having the on campus clinic was the best thing ever. I had some preschoolers on my caseload there, as well as lots of kids with speech sounds. And then my placement in the schools for our externships, I did pre-K through kindergarten. So I've had lots of experiences with the littles that have helped me get to where I am today.
Have you done any continued education to continue learning about speech sound disorders throughout your career?
Always. I feel like the best place to learn and where I've learned the most, honestly, is through like influencers on Instagram. I follow lots of great speech pathologists who specialize in speech sound disorders that I've learned a lot from. So not really, where you think you'd get continuing education from, but Instagram has been great for learning extra things. And then, of course, I've taken some courses on speechpathology.com that, focus on specific approaches. Like I've learned more about cycles approach, multiple oppositions approaches, things like that. I attended TU's presentation when Amy Graham came, and that was amazing. And that was all about speech sound disorders. So right up my alley.
I think the point about Instagram is really interesting because that's a platform that's really accessible to younger people in undergrad and grad school too, and just throughout the
Right.
career. So it's definitely a newer
Right.
platform, but a really interesting way to look at some new education. Do you have a favorite influencer on Instagram that talks about speech sound disorders?
Oh gosh, I would say Amy Graham, Jenny Bajoram, Adventures in Speech Pathology. They're all great ones that I like to follow along with, and they share great resources too. Another thing with that though is it's also accessible to parents. Like sometimes I'll tell parents, hey, go check this person out, or I might email them a link to a specific video that might help them when they're working on sounds in the home. So that's another population, that you might not think they target when you're looking at resources like research articles and things like that. It's not always the most jargon friendly for parents. So I also think that's super helpful as well.
What are some of your favorite activities for therapy when working with children who have speech sound disorders?
Games. Games are great. Books are great. I feel like with the littles, it's a lot of just play-based, child-led therapy. My favorite thing about speech sounds is you can literally incorporate it into anything / turn anything into an articulation-based activity. My primary goal, however, when targeting speech sounds is just the amount of trials I'm getting per session. So literally anything that can get me trials, whether it be, we're playing with poppers and I make a target and every time they hit a specific number, they have to say 5 words. If we're reading through a book, I have like the little magnetic chips that helps them keep track of how many words they're saying. Boom cards are great. I found some great digital trials activities. So yesterday I was actually working with a kid and we were reading. There was an old pirate who swallowed a map, and there was a little treasure chest that we would click every time we would say a word. So literally just anything that can get me trials, which games, like I said, that's probably my primarily one.
Do you see a pattern with a sound that you most frequently work on with kids in your caseload?
Oh gosh, I feel like it just kind of depends. At the preschool level, K and G, I feel, have been the one that I target the most. So lots of fronting. Cluster reduction is another big one I see with those S blends. When I'm looking at my older kids, though, that's a lot of L's, maybe some lingering lists and R's. So yeah, it's definitely been fun to learn different treatment approaches for that K and G specifically, since I've seen it so much, because sometimes it'll work. My strategies will work great for one kid, and then with another kid, I'm like, I got to figure something else out. So I would say those are my primary ones that I treat.
Okay, yeah. Do you have any favorite strategies of ways that you cue children when working on speech sound disorders?
Yeah, so I think that, or the Genevieve Joram speech sound cue cards, those are my go to, my most used therapy material. I think those are great visuals. And I also think that kids think it's a lot of fun to have, oh, let me hear your coughing sound, or the G sound is the goo goo gaga sound, and they think that's hilarious. So I think that's really helpful. I think that having like mirrors and having them see either themselves or me say the sounds or produce them a specific way is super helpful for eliciting those strategies. I like to incorporate food sometimes when I'm teaching it. So, like with the K and G, sometimes I'll take a lollipop and I'll hold their tongue down at the front so they can really feel the back working instead of the front. Or for like the S, I'll use like pretzel rods so that way they can practice leaving space between their teeth or not pushing their tongue too far forward so the pretzel doesn't break. So that's one of my favorite parts about speech sounds is it's kind of like a puzzle. You have to, really be creative in terms of how to get kids to elicit specific sounds while also keeping in mind that, like I said, what works for one kid may not work for another. So it always keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really liked your point about how all kids are different, so you have to find something that works for everybody. And the fact that you have all those different strategies in your back pocket is really cool. And something that as a student I want to get better at as well. But
Yeah.
that's very cool. So I have one more question for you. So for
Yeah.
younger clinicians, newer clinicians to the field, like graduate students or clinical fellows starting out, what advice would you give them if they have clients who have speech sound disorders?
Really take the time to spend building rapport with the child. I think that, speech sounds can be really challenging and can often be defeating. You see a lot of kids who don't want to talk because they know their friends aren't going to understand them. So just making time, whether it's like the first like 3 or 4 sessions, just building that relationship with the child so that way they learn to trust you and know that the feedback you are giving them is to be helpful, not hurtful. I also think just keeping an open mind, like I said, sometimes it's defeating as a therapist when you're working so hard on a sound and it's just not clicking for the kid. Everyone moves at a different pace and learns differently. So again, just being flexible and open-minded that, you need to adjust your strategies or just give the kid time. Sometimes time is all they need. So I think that would be advice that I wish I was given when I first started out. So
Well, I love that. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Yes, Mimi, I can attest to your speech sound therapy back in the day when she was a student at TU. She had my son in the clinic, and just from early on, you could see that passion and drive for you in this area of speech sounds. I think you've done a great job. So I just want to wrap up and thank you both again so much for being with us today. And Mimi, for the incredible work that you're doing and continue to do in your children's lives, whether they're the pre-Kers or the fifth graders. I know that you're making a difference, and really, I think it's a testament to you as a clinician, how you said that you're taking the time outside of therapy to build those tools, to figure out those strategies that really help each client. And that is awesome. That's what we want to see and hear from all of the speechies out in the world. So,
Yeah.
again, we appreciate your time so much. Thanks for being
Yeah.
here.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks for having me. I
you.
appreciate it.
For further information or podcast ideas that you'd like to share with us, please reach out at 918-631-2504. You can ask for Chloe or Sarah. We would be happy to chat with you.
Thank you, Studio 151, for letting us record. We look forward to recording future podcasts.
Remember, communication is not just about words. It's about understanding, empathy, and connection. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep communicating.